It should have been a perfect day. Or at least something close. That's what I kept telling myself as I pulled into the coastal resort parking lot in Santa Monica. The one Madison's mom had insisted on booking 14 months ago, when the only things we'd locked in were the ring and a Pinterest board full of soft florals and sunset ceremony *TS. The place was stunning. Oversized palm trees, wide marble steps, the kind of breezy sea air that makes people post videos with captions like, "Forever starts now." And in that moment, I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe we were exactly where we were supposed to be. Madison was already there when I arrived. Glowing, surrounded by her friends, all of them dressed like they were going to brunch, not a wedding rehearsal. I parked, took a deep breath, and tried to shake off the weird feeling I'd had since that morning. The feeling that something didn't fit. I don't know what it was exactly. Maybe just nerves. Pre-wedding anxiety is a real thing. I'd read enough articles and subreddits to know that even the happiest couples start getting snappy or weird when the big day closes in. But still, it lingered. She was laughing when I saw her. Not just laughing, beaming. Her body was turned just slightly away from me, angled toward a guy I didn't recognize. He had this expensive camera strapped across his chest, one of those mirrorless ones that all the lifestyle influencers use. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, and his posture was relaxed. Too relaxed, honestly, like he belonged there. Like he'd always been part of this. Madison looked up and saw me. Her expression didn't shift. She didn't jump, or wave, or run over and hug me the way she used to when I showed up to her office with coffee. She just offered a smile and mouthed something I didn't catch, then turned back to whatever joke he had just made. At first, I assumed he was part of the venue's media team. Or maybe one of those behind-the-scenes shooters Madison's ad agency sometimes hired for clients. That would make sense. She worked in marketing, after all. She liked aesthetic documentation. Still, something about the way they stood together didn't sit right. Their heads tilted close as they looked at something on his phone, her hand resting lightly on his forearm. I'd seen her make that move before. Casually and *mate, like she wasn't even thinking about it. But I was. As the rehearsal kicked off, I tried to shake it off. We walked through the order of the ceremony, the timing, the music cues. Her sister forgot her lines as maid of honor, and everyone laughed. The officiant made some dry joke about true love and beach wind. It should have felt normal. Didn't. Every time I glanced over, he was nearby. Never far. Always just in her peripheral orbit. At one point, we broke for refreshments in the shaded part of the garden. And that's when it happened. My phone buzzed. AirDrop request. I glanced around. We were in a group of maybe 15 friends, family, planners. I thought someone was trying to send a group photo. I tapped accept. That's when the image came through. I wish I could say it took me a second to process, but no. My eyes locked on it immediately. It was Madison, standing behind one of the tall white curtains near the back of the venue. Her back was slightly turned, but there was no mistaking her. That dress, her hair, her profile, it was her. She was holding hands with someone. And not just hand in hand like kids crossing a street. Their fingers were laced. Him. The photographer. There was no mistaking the familiarity in the posture. The way her shoulder leaned slightly toward him. The way his thumb rested on her wrist. I stared at the photo for what felt like a full minute. Then, before I could even process, the image disappeared. Gone. AirDrop didn't save it to my camera roll. It was just a temporary preview. I tapped around the app in a daze. But there was nothing, no trace. I didn't even catch the name of the sending device. Whoever had sent it had either done it by accident or done it deliberately. I looked around. No one seemed to be paying attention to me. Madison was laughing again. This time with her sister. I waited until later, back in the suite we were sharing for the week. The sunset had just begged *N to dip behind the water, casting everything in gold. She was standing at the mirror, wiping off her lipstick with a cotton pad. Cleared my throat. Hey! I started trying to sound casual. Someone sent me this photo earlier. I think it was a mistake. She didn't even pause. Oh? She said, still focused on her reflection. It was of you, I continued. With the photographer. Behind the curtain. You were holding hands. Now she turned. There was the briefest flicker in her eyes. I swear. But it was gone in a heartbeat, replaced by practiced calm. "Oh my God, Ethan," she said, laughing. "That was part of a concept we were shooting for the venue's brochure. You know, that dreamy, candid look everyone's doing now. We needed something, authentic feeling. I told them to make it feel more *mate, like a real couple moment." "You didn't tell me you were doing a shoot like that," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She walked toward me, her makeup half removed, her expression so sincere I almost hated myself for doubting her. "I thought I mentioned it," she said softly. "It wasn't a big deal. Just a quick *T we needed. I didn't know someone would airdrop it around. That's kind of embarrassing. But you know how these vendor teams are, always sharing stuff on site." I nodded slowly, my thoughts churning. She was calm. She wasn't defensive. If she was lying, she was doing a masterclass-level performance. "Besides," she added, placing a hand on my chest, "you think I'd really hold hands with someone like that in public? At our wedding venue?" It was the way she said "our" that got me, like she was reminding me of something I'd forgotten. I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to believe her. We were 7 days out. The welcome dinner was tomorrow. My parents were flying in the next morning. Half our lives were already committed, financially, socially, emotionally. Walking away now would mean unraveling everything. And maybe it was just a creative photo. Maybe I was being overly sensitive. So I kissed her on the forehead, told her I trusted her. She smiled and said she loved me. We went to bed that night like nothing had happened. But something had. Something definitely had. I just didn't know it yet. All I knew was that for the first time in 3 years together, I looked at Madison and didn't fully recognize what was behind her smile. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was standing next to my future. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something I wasn't ready to name. After the airdrop photo, after Madison's laugh, her careful explanation, and the warm touch of her hand on my chest, I tried to let it go. Tried. I told myself trust wasn't just a word you say in vows. It's something you practice. That's what relationships are built on, right? Faith in the other person, the benefit of the doubt. But something had cracked that day. And once a crack appears, it doesn't matter how small it is. You see it. Every time. No matter how hard you try to look away. That week should have been full of excitement. Last-minute checklist scrambles, cake tastings, hugs from out-of-town friends. And it was. But underneath it all, something had shifted. I started noticing things that didn't quite make sense. Things that, before the photo, I would have brushed off without thinking twice. Started with her phone. Madison used to leave it everywhere, on the counter while she cooked, in the bathroom during showers, on the nightstand while she slept. But suddenly, it was always within reach. Always screen down. I'd hear it buzz and watch her glance at the screen, tap quickly, and then slide it into her bag or her lap. And the notifications, they weren't there anymore. I didn't realize how much I noticed them until they vanished. No more preview pop-ups. No banners. Just the occasional vague vibration and her quiet, unreadable expression. I remember asking her once, casually, why her phone was on Do Not Disturb all the time. She smiled and said she was trying to stay more present in the moment. Digital detox, she called it. The week of the wedding should be sacred. That would have sounded noble if it hadn't come 2 days after I watched her take a call in the hallway and lower her voice the second she saw me. Then there was the smell. 3 nights in a row, she came home late, claiming last-minute meetings with vendors or check-ins at her agency. Each time, she kissed me hello like nothing was strange. But I caught it, just faintly. That scent, not her perfume. Not mine. Something sharper. Muskier. Definitely masculine. The first time I noticed it, I told myself it was nothing. The second time I asked, "Oh," she said, laughing. "That?" We were testing out some new ad products at the office, sample colognes for a grooming brand. We got a bunch of those little testers. One of them exploded in my bag. The whole place smelled like a mall kiosk for hours. She even did a little dramatic sniff of her shirt, wrinkling her nose. See? Still stuck on me. It sounded believable. I mean, she worked in branding. They were always sampling products. I'd seen her come home with everything from protein bars to blush palettes before. Why would cologne be different? But it was the way she told the story that stuck with me. The way it flowed too easily, like it had been rehearsed. And then came the laptop password change. We'd always been open with each other's tech. It wasn't like we were digging through messages or anything. We just didn't hide stuff. If I needed to check the calendar or pull up a spreadsheet for budgeting, I'd just open her laptop and do it. No big deal. Except one morning I tried, and it asked for a password. New login required. I asked her about it and she didn't miss a beat. Oh yeah, sorry. Had to change it. We just signed an NDA with a new client, and IT made us tighten up all our access points. I'll give you the new one later. She never did, and I didn't push. I didn't want to seem controlling. I kept telling myself that trust meant not asking twice, that people are allowed to have privacy, especially during stressful weeks, especially when they're planning a wedding and managing full-time jobs. But then there was the wardrobe. Madison always had style, not flashy, not overly trendy. Just elegant, comfortable, like she dressed for herself. That week, though, it shifted. Little by little. I didn't even clock it at first. She started wearing heels more often, not just for events but to quick lunches, planning meetings, even casual errands. She wore silk blouses that clung a little tighter, necklines that dipped lower, lace-trimmed camisoles layered under cropped jackets. Once, she walked out wearing a sheer top that left almost nothing to the imagination. When I asked, half joking, if she was dressing for a fashion shoot, she laughed and twirled. "Maybe I just want to feel hot at my own wedding," she said. "What, you don't like it?" And of course I did. She looked incredible. But it wasn't just about how she looked. It was about how she carried it. Like she was waiting for someone else to notice. Like she already knew someone would. I should have said something. I should have been honest about how it made me feel, how all of it was making me feel. But I didn't want to be the jealous guy, the insecure fiancé. I kept swallowing it, nodding along, convincing myself I was just overwhelmed by the magnitude of the wedding itself. But it wasn't just the little things anymore. I started noticing withdrawals from our joint account. At first, it was $20 here, $35 there. Not unusual. Wedding prep gets messy. You're always tipping a florist or grabbing last-minute materials. But then it was $100. Then $280. Then another $160. All marked ATM withdrawal. No merchant listed. I brought it up once, just to clarify if they were for vendors who wanted cash. She looked confused for a second, then nodded quickly. Yeah, the decorator's assistant asked for cash tips. I should have mentioned, and I paid the valet crew up front too. I asked if she had receipts. She waved it off. "They're just handwritten slips. I'll text you a photo." She never did. And suddenly, my own home started to feel unfamiliar. I'd walk into the living room and see her curled up with her laptop, screen tilted just slightly away. I'd ask what she was working on, and she'd answer with vague phrases like, "last-minute edits," or "client touch-ups." When I offered to help, she'd kiss me on the cheek and say she had it under control. Sometimes she was sweet, too sweet, bringing me coffee just the way I like it, calling me babe with a sing-song voice, sending me funny memes like she used to. But even in those moments, I felt like I was watching her act like my fiancé, not be her. There was distance in her eyes, a politeness that replaced int asterisk Macy, a mechanical kind of affection, gestures without presence. She'd sit next to me on the couch, lean her head on my shoulder, and I'd feel nothing, like she was doing what was expected, like she was there in body but already gone in every other way. And it finally hit me, late one night, lying in bed while she was still out on a vendor meeting. I stared at the ceiling fan turning slowly, the hum of it louder than the silence between us had been all week. I realized that somewhere along the way, I had stopped being part of her story. I was still in the pictures, still in the schedule, still in the plans, but not in her, not in the why of any of it. And I think that's what hurt the most. Not that she might be lying, not that she might be seeing someone else, but that I had become a background character in a life we were supposed to be building together. It happened on a Tuesday night, late, quiet, forgettable in every other way. I was half asleep on the couch, still wearing the same hoodie I'd put on after work. The TV was on but muted, the kind of ambient noise you let run just so the silence doesn't swallow you. Madison wasn't home yet. Again. She'd said she was having dinner with her old roommate, Claire. Some pre-bachelorette catch-up they'd been planning for weeks. I hadn't questioned it. Not out loud, at least. At some point after midnight, my phone buzzed. I thought it was a text from her, but it wasn't. It was a system alert. The home security app. Motion detected garage camera. Timestamp. 12:04 a.m. That wasn't unusual either. The camera sometimes triggered when the wind pushed debris around or when a neighborhood cat wandered in. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something made me open the feed. Took a few seconds to load. When it did, my breath caught in my chest. There she was. Madison. Stepping out of the passenger side of a sleek black sedan I didn't recognize. Not Claire's car. Not an Uber. The image was grainy, but clear enough. She smoothed her skirt as she stood, then turned toward the driver's side. The man who stepped out was instantly familiar, even without the high-res clarity. The same guy from the venue. The photographer. The same guy from the photo I'd been told was a marketing concept. They walked around the car in sync. He said something and she laughed. Quiet, close, natural. And then they kissed. Not a peck. Not a goodbye between co-workers. It was slow. Familiar. A kiss with history. His hand went to her lower back. Hers rose to the side of his face like it belonged there. Like it had belonged there for some time. They stood like that for a few seconds, long enough to remove any trace of ambiguity. Then he pulled back, whispered something again, and they walked toward the side door of our house. Our house. I paused the video. My fingers trembled. I sat still for a while. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe more. Just watching the frozen frame on the screen. I wanted to feel something big. Rage, heartbreak, devastation. But what I felt was smaller. Quieter. I felt cold. Not the kind of cold that makes you shiver, but the kind that settles deep in your chest and dulls everything. Like something inside you shuts off out of self-preservation. Like your heart knows it's not safe to beat at full strength. The next morning, she made coffee like nothing had happened. I came into the kitchen and found her standing barefoot in one of my old t-shirts, pouring almond milk into her mug like it was any other day. She looked up and smiled. "You slept on the couch again?" she asked, cocking her head with soft concern. "You okay?" I nodded. Lied. "Just couldn't fall asleep." She said, walking past me to grab her bag. "Claire says hi, by the way. She wants us to come up to Big Sur after the honeymoon. Her new place is right on the cliff. It's amazing." I couldn't speak, couldn't blink, just nodded again. She kissed me on the cheek before heading out. Said she loved me. Said we'd have a quiet night in that evening. Said she'd pick up wine. I watched her walk out the door, and I didn't ask about the security footage. I didn't tell her what I saw. I didn't confront her or throw my phone on the counter or demand explanations, because there was nothing left to explain. The video had taken something from me, something that had been barely holding on. Took the benefit of the doubt. It took the space where hope used to live, and it replaced it with certainty. Not dramatic, screaming, movie scene certainty. Not the kind that ends in thrown plates and slammed doors. This was different. This was quiet certainty. Icy. Permanent. I didn't sleep that night either. Instead, I watched the footage again. And again. I studied their movements like a stranger watching someone else's life fall apart. I noticed little things I hadn't caught the first time. How her hand reached for his before she stepped out of the car. How his head tilted just before their kiss. How they moved like they'd done this before. Like they had a rhythm. A routine. They didn't fumble. They weren't nervous. They were comfortable. That comfort told me everything I needed to know. I thought back to every explanation she'd given me over the past few weeks. Every late night, every disappearing notification, every laugh she gave a little too freely. It all started lining up. The puzzle I'd been trying so hard not to build was already finished. I'd just been pretending not to see the full picture. The next morning, I moved through our home like a guest. She had meetings. I worked from the office. We exchanged casual texts, wedding details, a forwarded email from the caterer, an inside joke about her dad's toast. The illusion still held. For her, anyway. But for me, something had shifted completely. I found myself withdrawing, not out of anger, but out of necessity. Like I had to start building an emotional evacuation plan. Like I had to slowly start packing up the version of myself that had believed we were a team. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not my parents, not my brother, not even my closest friend Ryan. Saying it out loud would have made it real, and I wasn't ready for that. Not because I didn't believe it, but because admitting it meant taking the next step. And I wasn't sure yet what that step was supposed to be. Do I cancel the wedding? Do I confront her and demand the truth? Do I pretend I don't know and wait until after the honeymoon? Every option felt like a nightmare. So I did the only thing I could do. I waited, watched, collected. I started making copies, *TS, timestamps, cloud backups. Not out of revenge, but for clarity. I needed to know I wasn't imagining any of this. I needed to have proof not just of the kiss but of the pattern. Because once someone lies to you with a straight face, you begin to doubt your own memory. So I kept everything. The garage footage. The ATM withdrawals. The mysterious appointment in her calendar labeled Studio Light Test. A receipt for an unfamiliar wine bar tucked into the glove box of her car. And the photo, the one from the airdrop, now etched in my mind like a tattoo I never asked for. And still, I said nothing. We had dinner 2 nights later, just the two of us. She was animated, happy, talking about table arrangements and how she'd convinced the planner to swap the floral arch last minute. She held my hand across the table, told me how lucky she felt, how she couldn't wait to call me her husband. I smiled. But inside, I felt like I was sitting across from someone wearing her skin. Not Madison. Not really. Just the version of her that still played the part. And as I watched her sip wine and talk about wedding playlists, all I could think was, how long has she been practicing this lie? And how many times has she told it before? After the garage footage, I stopped looking for lies and started looking for proof. There's a difference. Looking for lies makes you paranoid. You second-guess everything. Read too much into every glance or shrug. You chase shadows. But looking for proof? That's clarity. It's cold. Clean. It's what you do when you've already accepted the truth and just want to map out the damage. I didn't sleep much that week. I didn't eat much either. But I moved with purpose. Quietly. Deliberately. While Madison floated through the final wedding arrangements. Tasting menu revisions, bridesmaid gifts, playlist updates. I moved beneath it all, peeling back the surface we'd built together. It started with our wedding planner's shared cloud folder. She'd sent us access to it months ago. A Google Drive packed with contracts, floor plans, style boards, and appointment logs. I remembered it because I'd helped upload the deposit receipts. Madison said she'd organized the rest. Too many cooks, she'd teased. Let me handle the chaos. So I hadn't looked at it in a while. Now I opened it with new eyes. The first thing I noticed was a second folder tucked beneath ours, labeled Private Sessions. It wasn't hidden, just easy to overlook unless you were really searching. Inside were vendor notes, studio receipts, time-stamped calendar events I'd never heard about. Alternate shoot, Sunday 2 p.m. Studio reserved for *Macy test lighting, 90 minutes. Client, Madison A. / guest photographer, R.H. I opened the documents. Studio rental invoices, mood board PDFs, a few thumbnails of photography setups. The poses weren't *Zool, not explicitly, but they weren't neutral either. Dimly lit, close angles. Candids of intertwined fingers, soft smiles against necks, foreheads pressed together. A softness that wasn't staged. A closeness you couldn't fake. The guest photographer's initials, R.H., matched the name I'd seen on one of her recent email threads. I searched it again. There it was, Ryan Holloway. Studio at domain.com. That was his name. I hadn't known it until that moment. Ryan Holloway, the photographer, the man she kissed in our garage. I sat there, staring at the screen, and realized I was looking at the blueprint of another relationship. One that had been growing silently alongside ours. Not replacing it, not destroying it outright. Just coexisting, like a shadow beside the light. But it didn't stop there. I logged into our joint bank account. Not the surface-level statements, but the full activity logs. Madison and I had always managed our finances together. She handled the creative spending. I handled the spreadsheets and savings. I knew what normal looked like. This wasn't normal. Recurring payments to a property management company I didn't recognize. Bi-weekly, same amount each time, labeled Unit Number 17, DTLA. At first, I thought maybe it was a vendor deposit she'd forgotten to mention. But then I searched the address tied to the company. It was a loft, a small photography studio on the edge of the arts district downtown. Industrial windows, exposed brick. I found their Instagram. Minimalist space, high-end packages, perfect for creative couples, lifestyle brands, and editorial storytelling. The page was filled with moody black and white portraits, lovers in embrace, close-up hands across skin, aesthetics designed to feel raw and unscripted. And there, buried halfway down the feed, was one of Madison. She was sitting on the floor in a thin white tank top, knees pulled up to her chest, head tilted against the light. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at someone just out of frame. Her eyes were soft, not posed, real. It was tagged, at Madison, Amelie, Studio Night 2. The comments were turned off. I didn't even remember her being gone that night. Maybe she said it was an agency shoot. Maybe I didn't ask. Maybe I didn't want to know. I searched our email history next. Madison had always been good at keeping her inbox clean. Folders, filters, color-coded labels. But that night, I thought to check the Accounts tab in our Gmail settings. There, under Connected Addresses, was one I'd never seen. Amelie, Studio, edit@gmail.com. A secondary email. Quiet. No alerts. No syncs. I logged in. The password was a variation of one we used for Netflix, slightly altered. She hadn't bothered to change it. I don't know what I expected to find. A full confession? Explicit photos? What I found was worse. It was organized. Coldly efficient. There were threads between her and Ryan, dozens of them, all logged with subject lines like Ref, Final Edits, Lookbook Draft 3, Client Mood Set. But the language inside wasn't professional. Not all of it. In between the file attachments and lighting notes were phrases like, "Can't stop thinking about the shoot last night. You looked insane under that amber light. I love how you open up when you're behind the lens. Wish I could keep you there forever." Our light test. A folder name that appeared more than once. She had sent him photos of herself. Casual ones. At home, barefaced. Wrapped in the blanket we used on movie nights. Captioned editing from the Nest spiral shell. He had replied with hearts. It wasn't graphic. It wasn't even overtly romantic. But it was int asterisk mate. Deeply, undeniably so. A kind of language people only speak when they've been inside each other's personal space. Physically, emotionally, or both. The emails dated back months. Back to when we had first toured the venue. Back to when she'd said she was too busy to do couples counseling. Back to when I thought we were just hitting a rough patch. But it wasn't a rough patch. It was the construction phase of a second life. One built on secrets, carefully timed messages, studio rentals and selective truths, and all of it layered neatly beneath the planning of our wedding. That was the part that gutted me. Not the kiss, not the photos, not even the second email account. It was the parallel effort. The way she could coordinate catering tastings with me on a Monday and send light test selfies to someone else on a Tuesday. It wasn't laziness or accident. It was deliberate, engineered, and I had helped build it without realizing. Every moment I thought we were working towards something together, she was also feeding something else, protecting it, nurturing it in the same breath. Not in place of us. Alongside us. That's what betrayal is, I think. Not just the lie, but the labor that goes into maintaining it. The active choice to preserve both lives, and let one person stay in the dark because it's more convenient for everyone else. That night, I stared at the photos until my eyes blurred. Then I saved them all to a private drive. Every file, every receipt, every message. Not because I wanted revenge. Not even because I wanted to confront her. I just needed the story to be real. Because if I didn't save it, part of me would always wonder if I imagined it. If I'd made it bigger than it was. If I'd made it up to protect myself from some flaw I couldn't see in me. But I wasn't the one living two lives. She was. And now, finally, I had the map. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I gathered every email, photo, receipt, and handed it to my attorney. Bank accounts split, assets frozen. Quiet cancellations went out. Madison's family tried spinning it as a misunderstanding, but there was nothing left to defend. Every smile, every plan, every detail had been part of the performance, and I was done applauding. 1 week later, I left the keys on the counter and moved cities. The story made headlines. Her agency dropped her. The photographer vanished online. For me, it wasn't heartbreak. It was clarity. I hadn't lost a partner. I'd shed a lie. What remained was silence, peace, and the strength to start again. Some endings aren't collapses. They're corrections.